The bar on Station Osiris smelled like recycled air and broken promises. I was nursing my third whiskey when she walked in, and I knew immediately that my quiet retirement was about to end badly. You develop instincts after 15 years working salvage in the outer territories, instincts that tell you when something's wrong, when danger's wearing a friendly face, when Death's ordered a drink and sat down next to you. She didn't look like Death. She looked like a tourist who'd wandered into the wrong neighborhood, all wide eyes and uncertain movements. Human enough that nobody gave her a second glance, but I'd spent enough time in the gray zones to spot the tells. The way she moved was just slightly off, too fluid, too precise. Her skin had that odd quality you only saw in high-end biomimicry, and her eyes, green and apparently normal, tracked the room with mathematical efficiency, cataloging exits and threats in microseconds. I should have left, should have finished my drink, paid my tab, and disappeared into the station's maze of corridors before she finished whatever reconnaissance she was running. But curiosity had always been my weakness, the reason I'd survived when smarter people died. I wanted to know what brought a Xithe infiltrator to a human dive bar on the ass end of nowhere. She approached the bar 3 seats down from me, ordered water, which was its own tell, since nobody drank water in a place where the alcohol was safer, and sat with the careful posture of someone pretending to be relaxed. The bartender, a grizzled veteran named Cole who'd seen everything twice, served her without comment. This wasn't the kind of establishment where you ask questions. I waited 5 minutes before speaking. "Your human suit's pretty good," I said conversationally, not looking at her directly. "But you're overcompensating on the breathing rhythm. Real humans are irregular, anxious. You're too controlled." She went absolutely still. In my peripheral vision, I saw her hand drift toward her jacket, toward whatever weapon she'd brought to this meeting. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, and even her voice was almost perfect, just a hint of synthetic smoothness beneath the words. "Sure you don't." I finally turned to look at her properly, meeting those green eyes that definitely weren't human the closer you looked. "I'm Jake Reeves. Used to run salvage for the consortium before I figured out they were paying me in blood money. Now I drink too much and try not to think about the things I've seen. And you're wearing a biological disguise that probably costs more than this entire station. So either you're here to kill someone specific, or you're about to make me a very interesting job offer." She studied me for a long moment, her hand still near her weapon. Then something changed in her expression calculation, shifting to decision. "My name is Lyra," she said quietly, "and I'm here because the Queen thinks you might be the only human who can help us stop a genocide." That got my attention. I took a slow sip of whiskey, letting the burn center me. "The Xithe Queen wants my help? That's rich. Your people have been raiding our colonies for years. You've killed thousands of humans. And now you want to talk about genocide?" "We've been defending ourselves," Lyra said, and there was heat in her voice now, real emotion breaking through the disguise. "Every raid, every attack, it's been retaliation for incursions into our territory, for ships that violated our borders, for weapons platforms built to threaten our worlds. Your consortium doesn't tell its salvagers the truth about what they're really salvaging, does it?" She had a point. The consortium had a way of leaving out crucial details, of presenting jobs as straightforward when they were anything but. I'd learned that the hard way, learned it in blood and fire and sleepless nights. "Okay," I said. "I'm listening. What genocide are we talking about?" Lyra glanced around the bar, checking for listeners. The place was mostly empty, a few drunks in corners, a couple playing cards badly. Cole wiping glasses behind the bar with his usual indifference. Nobody cared about our conversation. Nobody cared about much on Station Osiris except surviving another day. "There's a weapon," Lyra said, leaning closer, "developed by a black ops division within your military. It's designed to target Xithe biology specifically, to rewrite our genetic code and cause cascading organ failure. Once deployed, it would spread through our population like wildfire. The Queen's projections suggest 98% mortality within 6 months, complete extinction within a year." I felt sick. I'd known humanity was capable of terrible things, hell. I'd participated in some of them, but this was beyond anything I'd imagined. "Why tell me? Why not just steal the weapon, destroy it?" "Because we don't know where it is," Lyra admitted. "The program is compartmentalized, hidden across multiple facilities. But the Queen's intelligence network identified one person who knows the complete picture, who has access to all the locations and security protocols. A man named Dr. Marcus Venn, currently held in a black site prison on Luna. We need him extracted. We need the information in his head. And we need someone with your skills to make it happen." I laughed, but it was the kind of laugh that comes when you realize the universe has a sick sense of humor. "You want me to break into a Luna black site? Those facilities are designed to be impenetrable. They're staffed by the best security personnel in the system, equipped with tech that makes civilian defenses look like paper locks, and monitored by AI systems that never sleep or blink. People go into Luna black sites and they don't come out, ever." Lyra didn't flinch. "The Queen has resources, technology that your security systems won't detect. Intelligence on guard rotations, structural weaknesses, protocol, gaps. And she has me someone who can pass for human long enough to get us inside." She paused, studying my face. "But she doesn't have someone who understands how humans think, how they react under pressure, how to improvise when plans inevitably fall apart. That's why she needs you. The Queen seems to know a lot about me for someone I've never met. She knows everything about you, Jake Reeves. Born on Earth, enlisted at 18, served in the frontier wars until you saw things that broke your faith in the cause. Went private sector, worked salvage for 8 years, accumulated an impressive record of impossible retrievals. Then you discovered what you were really salvaging: weapons components being smuggled to rebel factions, tech stolen from peaceful species, evidence of war crimes that needed to disappear. You walked away from a fortune, from security, from everything you'd built. Now you drink on a forgotten station and wonder if any of it mattered. Hearing my life summarized so clinically should have angered me. Instead, I felt something else: recognition, maybe. The sense that someone had actually looked past the surface and seen the wreckage underneath. "The Queen's surveillance is impressive," I said flatly. "It's not surveillance. It's necessity." Lyra's disguise flickered for just a moment, and I caught a glimpse of what lay beneath iridescent skin, features that were almost human but refined into something alien and unsettling. Then the illusion snapped back into place. We're fighting for survival against an enemy that wants us erased from existence. The Queen does what she must to protect our people. That includes identifying humans who might be different, who might see past the propaganda and understand that this war doesn't have to be inevitable. I drained my whiskey, considering. The smart play was to refuse, to let Lyra walk out and pretend this conversation never happened. I'd walked away from complications once before, built a nice, quiet life of drinking and forgetting. Getting involved in Xithe politics, breaking into military black sites, choosing sides in a conflict that had nothing to do with me, that was the opposite of smart. But the scientist in that prison, Dr. Venn, he had information about a genocide weapon, and if the weapon existed, if it was real, then sitting on the sidelines wasn't neutrality, it was complicity. "I want to meet her first," I said. "Your queen. If I'm going to risk my life for this, if I'm going to betray my own species, I want to look her in the eye and know that what you're telling me is true. That this isn't some elaborate trap or manipulation." Lyra's expression shifted: surprise, maybe respect. The Queen doesn't meet with humans. She exists in spaces your biology can't survive, processes information at speeds that would shatter your consciousness. Meeting her directly would kill you. Then we've got a problem, because I don't work on faith anymore. Faith got burned out of me, somewhere between my third war crime and my fourth crisis of conscience. For a long moment, Lyra just looked at me, those almost human eyes searching for something. Then she reached into her jacket slowly, giving me time to react if I was going to, and pulled out a small device that looked like a mix between a medical injector and a piece of alien art. "There is a way," she said carefully. "A neural bridge. It would allow you to experience a fragment of the Queen's consciousness, to see what she sees, understand what she knows. But it's dangerous for humans. Your neural architecture isn't designed for the kind of information density involved. Some who've tried have suffered permanent damage. Define permanent damage: psychosis, catatonia. In one case, complete personality dissolution." She set the device on the bar between us, "but you would know the truth. You would see the weapon, see the threat, see everything we're telling you verified beyond any possibility of doubt. You would also see us, the Xithe, as we really are. Not the monsters your propaganda depicts, but people trying to survive in a universe that's hostile to anything different." I stared at the device, thinking about risk and truth and the ways I'd been lying to myself for years. I'd walked away from the consortium because I couldn't stand being complicit in their crimes, but walking away wasn't the same as doing something about it. It was just a different kind of cowardice, a comfortable numbness instead of active evil. "How does it work?" I asked. Lyra picked up the device, her fingers moving over its surface in patterns that seemed to activate something within. It began to pulse with a soft blue light. "I inject it at the base of your skull. The nanites create a temporary neural link with my own implants, and through me with the Queen's network. You'll experience approximately 30 seconds of accelerated consciousness, what will feel like hours of information compressed into a moment. Then the nanites dissolve, the link breaks, and you're back to normal. Probably. Probably. I've never done this with a human before. The Queen has, but the success rate is only about 60%. Fantastic odds." I turned the empty whiskey glass in my hands, watching the station lights refract through the crystal. 60% chance of coming out intact, 40% chance of ending up a drooling vegetable. And if I said no, if I walked away, I'd spend the rest of my life wondering if I could have stopped a genocide and chose not to because I was afraid. I'd spent enough time being afraid. "Do it," I said, setting down the glass and turning my back to her, exposing my neck. "But if I come out of this damaged, I'm haunting you from whatever hell broken minds go to." I felt her move closer, felt the cold touch of the injector against my skin. "The Queen says you're brave," Lyra murmured. I didn't believe her until now. Most humans would run. Most humans are smarter than me. The injection was quick, just a sharp pressure and then a cold spreading sensation at the base of my skull. For a few seconds, nothing happened. I started to think maybe the device had malfunctioned, that we'd need to try again. Then reality fractured. I was everywhere and nowhere. My consciousness exploded outward like a star going supernova, fragmenting into a million pieces while somehow remaining whole. I could see through 1,000 eyes, think with 100 minds, feel the collective heartbeat of an entire civilization pulsing through neural networks that spanned light years. The sensation was overwhelming, beautiful, and absolutely terrifying. Then, she was there. Not physically, the Queen existed beyond physical form in any way I could comprehend, but as a presence, vast and incomprehensible yet somehow intimate. I felt her attention focus on me like a spotlight narrowing to illuminate a single point in darkness. Jake Reeves, her voice wasn't sound but pure meaning injected directly into my consciousness. You want truth. I will show you truth, but know that once seen, it cannot be unseen. Once understood, it will change you forever. Images flooded my mind, not as passive observation but as lived experience. I was suddenly in a Xithe colony, walking streets of living architecture, surrounded by beings whose thoughts I could feel as clearly as my own. Children playing games that involved manipulating localized gravity fields. Artists creating sculptures from solidified light. Scientists working on problems I couldn't even name, their minds connected in collaborative networks that made human research teams seem impossibly limited. Then the attack came. Human ships dropping from orbit, weapons firing indiscriminately into population centers. I felt thousands die in an instant, felt the Queen's horror and rage and desperate attempts to coordinate defense. Saw the survivors pulled from rubble, their bodies broken, their minds screaming trauma across the neural network. Felt the Queen absorb all that pain, carry it, because that was her burden as the nexus of her people's consciousness. This was the Helios incident. The Queen's voice cut through the chaos. Your history calls it a justified military strike against a Xithe weapons facility. The truth is we had no weapons there. It was a civilian settlement, home to 30,000 souls. Your military knew this. They attacked anyway, to send a message about human dominance. The scene shifted. I was in a sterile laboratory now, watching human scientists working on something that made my stomach turn. Genetic sequences being rewritten, biological agents being cultured, simulations running that showed Xithe bodies breaking down at the cellular level. Dr. Marcus Venn stood at the center, brilliant and terrible, orchestrating the creation of a plague. The Erasure Protocol, the Queen said. What your military calls the final solution to the Xithe problem. Dr. Venn has been working on it for 6 years, refining it, making it more efficient. He believes he's saving humanity from a threat. He doesn't understand that he's become the very monster he fears. I watched simulations of the weapon's deployment, saw Xithe worlds dying, populations collapsing, the neural network fragmenting as billions of minds winked out of existence, felt the Queen's calculations of survival 0%, complete extinction, the end of everything her people had built over millennia. Why? I managed to think, my consciousness struggling to form coherent thoughts in this accelerated state. Why show me this? Why not just tell me? Because humans lie. To each other, to themselves, constantly and reflexively. Words are tools of deception in your culture. But this, the experience intensified, became more vivid. This is direct neural transfer. You are experiencing my memories, my knowledge, exactly as I hold them. There is no possibility of deception, no room for misunderstanding. You know now with absolute certainty that everything I've told you is true." The scene shifted again. I was in the black site prison on Luna, watching Dr. Venn in his cell. He looked tired, broken, kept in isolation to prevent him from sharing what he knew. But I could see the data in his mind. The Queen's intelligence network had managed some kind of surface scan locations, protocols, security systems for 6 different facilities where components of the Erasure Protocol were being developed. "He is the key," the Queen said. "Extract him, get the complete information from his mind, and we can destroy the weapon before it's deployed. Fail, and my people die. All of us. Every child, every artist, every scientist, every dreamer, erased because humanity fears what it doesn't understand." I wanted to argue, to defend my species, to say that not all humans were like this. But I'd seen enough in my own life to know that the Queen was right. Humanity's first response to the unknown was usually violence. We talked about peace and cooperation, but our history was written in blood, in conquered peoples and destroyed civilizations and justified atrocities. The connection began to fade, reality reassembling itself around me. But before it broke completely, I felt something else, something the Queen hadn't intended to show me, or maybe had: Lyra. The Queen's consciousness touched on her infiltrator, and I experienced a burst of information about the woman sitting next to me in the bar. Lyra wasn't just a soldier. She was a volunteer, someone who'd asked for the dangerous assignment of infiltrating human space. Her family had died in the Helios incident: parents, siblings, a bonded partner. She'd watched them burn through the neural network, felt them die. She had every reason to hate humanity with the kind of rage that demanded vengeance. Instead, she'd chosen this mission, chosen to believe that not all humans were monsters, that some might be saved or convinced to stand against their own kind. She'd chosen to believe that someone like me existed. The neural link severed, and I slammed back into my body so hard I fell off the bar stool. Pain exploded through my skull, white-hot and all-consuming. I was vaguely aware of Lyra catching me, lowering me to the floor, her voice saying something I couldn't process through the agony. My vision swam, doubled, tripled. The bar spun around me in nauseating circles. Then, slowly, the pain began to recede. My vision cleared. My breathing steadied. I found myself staring up at Lyra's face. Her disguise dropped completely now. Her true features visible, sharp and angular, beautiful in an alien way. Her eyes showing genuine concern. "You're alive," she said, relief evident in her voice. "I wasn't certain you would survive the connection." The Queen pushed more information through than I've ever seen her attempt with a human. I sat up carefully, my head still pounding but manageable. Cole was standing behind the bar watching us, his expression unreadable. A few of the other patrons had noticed something was wrong, but nobody was approaching. That was Station Osiris for you: mind your own business, or risk becoming someone else's problem. "I need a drink," I croaked, "something stronger than whiskey." Lyra helped me back onto the bar stool, her true form now on full display. She no longer bothered with the disguise. Maybe she figured if I was going to turn her in, I'd have done it already. Cole poured something amber into a glass without comment and slid it across. I downed it in one burning gulp. "So," Lyra said carefully, "you've seen the truth. You know what's at stake. Will you help us?" I thought about everything I'd experienced in those 30 seconds that felt like hours. Thought about the Xithe colony burning, about children dying, about a species facing extinction. Thought about Dr. Ven in his cell, brilliant and broken, holding the keys to genocide. Thought about Lyra and her dead family, about the choice she'd made to reach out to the enemy instead of simply hating us. "Yeah," I said, my voice still rough. "I'll help, but I need to know everything, the full plan, the resources you have, the timeline. And I need guarantees that we're not just trading one genocide for another. I break Ven out. I help you destroy this weapon. But I'm not signing up to help the Xithe wipe out humanity in retaliation." Lyra's expression softened, something like gratitude flickering across her alien features. "The Queen doesn't want humanity destroyed. She wants coexistence, peace negotiated from a position of mutual survival rather than mutual annihilation. But she can't negotiate if her entire species is dead. That's what this is about, buying time, preventing the worst outcome so that maybe, eventually, there's a chance for something better." Cole cleared his throat from behind the bar. "You two planning to conduct your interstellar conspiracy in my establishment all night, or you want to take this somewhere more private?" His tone was casual, but I caught the warning underneath. Station Osiris thrived on illegal activity, but even here there were limits. Having a Xithe agent sitting openly at the bar was pushing boundaries. "We need a secure location," Lyra said, looking at me. "Somewhere we can plan without surveillance. The Queen's provided resources, but they're useless if we're being monitored." I thought for a moment, running through options. Station Osiris was a patchwork of competing interests, criminal syndicates, corporate black ops, refugees from a dozen conflicts, people who'd come here because everywhere else had rejected them. That chaos created opportunities, but it also meant trust was a rare commodity. Still, I knew one place that might work. "I've got a berth on level 14, I said. "It's technically abandoned maintenance quarters, but I've been squatting there for 3 months. No official records, no surveillance feeds that still function. We can talk there without anyone knowing." We left the bar, drawing curious looks but no challenges. Lyra walked beside me through the station's corridors, her true form attracting attention but not panic. Osiris had seen stranger things. A maintenance worker glanced at us, then deliberately looked away. A group of traders gave us a wide berth. Nobody wanted to get involved in whatever story we represented. Level 14 was as depressing as I remembered corroded bulkheads, flickering lights, the constant drip of condensation from overtaxed environmental systems. My quarters were at the end of a dead-end corridor, behind a door that looked sealed but opened if you knew the trick. Inside was Spartan, a sleeping mat, a few personal items, a portable computer I used for occasional freelance work. Not much to show for 15 years of life, but it was mine. Lyra examined the space with professional interest, probably scanning for surveillance devices or security weaknesses. Satisfied, she settled onto the floor with fluid grace. "We have 4 days," she said without preamble. "That's the window when Dr. Ven will be transferred between facilities. During transport, he'll be vulnerable. That's our opportunity. 4 days to plan a black site extraction?" I laughed bitterly. "Operations like this usually take months of preparation. We're talking about infiltrating one of the most secure facilities in the solar system, extracting a high-value prisoner, and escaping before they can organize a response. That's not a 4-day job. It's the only window we have," Lyra insisted. "The Queen's intelligence indicates that after this transfer, Ven will be moved to a facility we can't penetrate. This is our chance. Our only chance." I paced the small space, my mind already working through logistics. "Okay, Walk me through what resources you have: ships, weapons, tech, personnel. And I need to know your capabilities. What can you do that I can't? Lyra began outlining the Xithe resources, and with each revelation, I felt my estimation of our odds improve slightly. They had stealth technology that could mask a ship from human sensors, biological compounds that could fool security scans, neural disruptors that could incapacitate guards without killing them. More importantly, they had detailed intelligence on Luna's black site operations, guard rotations, supply schedules, architectural layouts. The Queen has been preparing for this for months, Lyra explained. She knew Ven was the key, knew eventually there would be an opportunity. She's invested significant resources into making this possible, but she still needed a human operator, someone who understands how your military thinks, how they'll react when things go wrong. Things always go wrong, I muttered, studying the facility schematics she displayed on a holographic projector. The question is whether we can adapt fast enough to survive the wrongness. We worked through the night, building a plan that was equal parts desperate and audacious. The transfer would happen via secure shuttle from Luna Base to a orbital platform. We'd intercept during the brief window when the shuttle was between facilities, when its security was necessarily reduced due to the constraints of space travel. Lyra would use her infiltration skills to pose as a guard, getting us aboard. I'd handle the human elements, talking our way through checkpoints, improvising when the plan inevitably hit obstacles. As we worked, I found myself studying Lyra when she wasn't looking. In her true form, she was striking all sharp angles and flowing lines, her skin catching light in ways that suggested it wasn't quite solid matter. Her movements were economical, precise, the product of training I couldn't even imagine. But there were moments when the warrior facade cracked, when I glimpsed the person underneath. The way her expression would tighten when discussing the Helios incident. The slight hesitation before committing to particularly dangerous parts of the plan. The flicker of something that might have been fear or hope or both. "You lost people," I said during a lull in the planning. It wasn't a question. Lyra went still, her eyes finding mine. For a long moment I thought she wouldn't answer. Then she spoke, her voice carrying weight I hadn't heard before. My family, my partner, everyone I loved. I felt them die through the neural network, experience their last moments. The Queen tried to shield me, to dampen the connection, but I refused. I needed to know, needed to remember. "I'm sorry," I said, the words feeling inadequate. "Your people did this. Your military, your government, your collective decision that we were threats to be eliminated." There was no accusation in her tone, just tired statement of fact. "I could hate you for it. Hate all humans. That would be easier, cleaner. But hatred is what brought us here. Hatred is what created the Erasure Protocol. If I let myself become what humans fear, then they win. Then my family died for nothing." I understood that logic. I'd wrestled with similar demons after leaving the consortium, after realizing how much harm I'd enabled through ignorance and willful blindness. "So, you chose this," I said. "Infiltration, working with humans, trying to build bridges instead of burning them. The Queen believes there's another way forward," Lyra said. "A path where both species survive, where we find accommodation instead of annihilation. I'm not certain I believe it's possible, but I have to try. Because if I don't, if I give in to rage and grief, then I become just another soldier in an endless war. And I'm tired of war." The next 3 days blurred together in a haze of preparation and nervous energy. Lyra proved to be an efficient partner, her military training evident in how she approached problems, methodical, thorough, always thinking 3 moves ahead. We acquired equipment through Station Osiris's thriving black market, careful not to attract too much attention. Forged credentials, encrypted communication devices, weapons that wouldn't trigger standard security scans. Each piece of the puzzle fell into place, and with each addition, the plan shifted from theoretical to terrifyingly real. On the second day, we ran drills in an abandoned cargo bay, practicing the insertion sequence until our movements became automatic. Lyra could shift her appearance at will, her biology allowing for modifications that made human disguises look primitive. She cycled through different guard personas, adjusting height, build, facial features with disturbing ease. Watching her work was mesmerizing and unsettling in equal measure, a reminder that I was partnering with something fundamentally other, no matter how human she could appear. "You're staring again," she said without looking at me, her form currently matching a Luna-based security officer we'd identified as part of the transfer detail. "Sorry. It's just, doesn't it hurt, changing like that?" "Everything hurts," Lyra replied, her voice taking on the clipped military cadence of the officer she was mimicking. "You learn to work through pain or you don't survive. The Xithe don't have the luxury of comfort, not anymore. We adapt or we die." I wanted to push the conversation further, to understand more about her biology, her experience, the weight she carried. But something in her posture told me she'd shared enough vulnerability for one day. Instead, I focused on my own preparation, reviewing the facility layouts until I could navigate them blindfolded, memorizing guard protocols and security procedures. On the third day, we received confirmation from the Queen's intelligence network. The transfer was happening as scheduled. Dr. Marcus Venn would be moved from Luna Base at 0600 hours station time, transported via secure shuttle to Platform Epsilon 7. Transit time, approximately 40 minutes. Security detail, 8 guards, all veteran military police with extensive screening. The shuttle itself was a fortress, equipped with countermeasures and enough firepower to fend off a small assault fleet. "This is insane," I said, staring at the final security assessment. "Even with all our preparation, the odds of success are maybe 30%. And that's being optimistic." Lyra sat across from me, her current appearance that of a nondescript station resident, forgettable and average. "The Queen's probability calculations put our success rate at 42%. Those are acceptable odds given the alternative." Acceptable? We're more likely to fail than succeed. And failure means death, or worse, interrogation, exposure of the Queen's intelligence network, maybe triggering the very war we're trying to prevent. "Yes," Lyra said simply. "Those are the stakes. This is what choosing to act looks like, Jake. It's not clean or certain or safe. It's risking everything on a chance that maybe, possibly, you can make things slightly better than they would have been if you'd done nothing." She was right, and I hated that she was right. I'd spent years avoiding exactly this kind of commitment, this kind of risk where failure meant more than personal loss. But I'd seen what I'd seen in that neural link with the Queen. I'd experienced the truth of what was coming if we failed, and I couldn't unknow it, couldn't pretend it wasn't my problem. "All right," I said, "we go tomorrow. But I want one thing clear: if this goes sideways, if we're compromised and there's no way out, I'm not letting them take you alive. The intel you carry, your connection to the Queen, it's too valuable. I'll make it quick if it comes to that." Lyra studied me with those alien eyes, something unreadable in her expression. You would kill me to protect my people. I'd kill you to prevent worse outcomes. Don't mistake it for nobility. It's just tactical thinking. No, she said softly. It's sacrifice. Choosing the hard thing because it's right, even when it costs you. That's what the Queen saw in you, Jake. That's why she believed you were different. The moment hung between us, heavy with implications neither of us wanted to fully examine. Then Lyra stood, breaking the tension. We should rest. Tomorrow will be difficult, and we'll need every advantage. But I couldn't rest. As Lyra settled into a meditation that passed for sleep among her people, I found myself staring at the station's viewports, watching ships come and go against the star field. Each vessel represented lives, stories, choices branching into infinite possibilities. How many of them knew they were living on the edge of genocide? How many would care if they did? I thought about Dr. Then, about the man who'd created a weapon capable of extinguishing an entire species. Was he evil, or just brilliant and scared, convinced he was protecting humanity from a threat? I'd known men like that during my military service, good people who did monstrous things because they believed the alternative was worse. The road to hell wasn't just paved with good intentions, it was engineered by them, every stone carefully placed by someone who thought they were building heaven. Morning came too quickly. Lyra emerged from her meditation refreshed and focused, while I felt like I'd been awake for weeks. We dressed in the clothing we'd acquired me in the jumpsuit of a maintenance contractor, Lyra in civilian clothes that would transform once we were closer to the target. Our weapons were concealed, our forged credentials loaded onto cards that would pass cursory inspection. The journey to Luna took 6 hours aboard a commercial transport, packed with workers and travelers who had no idea they were sharing space with a Xithe infiltrator and a washed-up salvager about to attempt something suicidal. Lyra sat beside me, her disguise perfect, occasionally making small talk that sounded natural and unremarkable. I marveled at her ability to simply turn off the warrior, to become the mask she wore. "You're good at this," I murmured during a quiet moment. "The infiltration, the acting. How many missions have you run in human territory?" "This is my first," Lyra replied, keeping her voice low. "I trained extensively, studied human behavior and culture, practiced the disguises, but I've never actually operated in your space before. The Queen chose me because I volunteered and because I had reasons to want this mission to succeed." "You mean revenge?" "I mean purpose," she corrected. "Revenge would be easy, kill humans, hurt them the way they hurt me. Purpose is harder. It requires believing that the pain I experience doesn't have to be replicated, that cycles can be broken if someone's willing to try." Luna loomed larger in the viewport, gray and cratered and beautiful in its desolation. Humanity's first permanent off-world settlement, now a sprawling complex of habitats and facilities. Somewhere down there, Dr. Venn was being prepared for transport, unaware that his carefully ordered world was about to intersect with ours in violent and unpredictable ways. We disembarked with the other passengers, moving through customs with the bored efficiency of people who'd made this trip 100 times. Our credentials passed inspection, our equipment registered as mundane. We were invisible, unremarkable, exactly what we needed to be. The rendezvous point was a maintenance hub near the transport pads, a sprawling facility where shuttles were serviced and supplies loaded. Lyra found a restroom, emerged 10 minutes later as the security officer she'd been practicing, complete with uniform and authorization codes. The transformation was flawless. I'd walked past her twice before recognizing who she was. "Phase 1, complete," she said quietly, falling into step beside me. "The shuttle arrives in 20 minutes. Security will be tight but manageable. Stay close, follow my lead, and remember confidence sells the dream. Lie better than any forged credential." Section 6. We moved through Luna Base with the purposeful stride of people who belonged, who had every right to be exactly where they were. Lyra's transformation was complete, not just the physical appearance but the entire demeanor of a seasoned security officer. She exchanged nods with actual guards, responded to casual greetings with the exact right blend of professionalism and camaraderie. I followed half a step behind, playing the role of civilian contractor she was escorting, invisible in my ordinariness. The transport pad was organized chaos. Supply shuttles coming and going, crews loading cargo, supervisors barking orders into headsets. And in the center of it all, cordoned off by additional security, was the shuttle that would carry Dr. Ven. It was smaller than the cargo vessels, sleek and armored, designed for speed and defense rather than capacity. Armed guards stood at intervals around it, their weapons held with the casual readiness of professionals who'd seen real combat. "Authorization," a guard said, as we approached the security perimeter. He was young, maybe 25, with the hard eyes of someone who'd already learned that the universe was cruel and unforgiving. Lyra produced her credentials without hesitation, her movements smooth and practiced. "Officer Chen, Security Detail Augmentation. Command sent me to reinforce the transport team. Apparently there's been chatter about potential interdiction attempts." The guard scanned her credentials, his expression skeptical. "Nobody told me about augmentation." "Let me verify with, by all means, call it in," Lyra interrupted, her tone perfectly calibrated between annoyed and professional. "While you're at it, explain to Colonel Reese why you're delaying a priority transfer because you weren't included in the updated roster. I'm sure he'll be understanding about communication failures." The guard hesitated, caught between protocol and the very real fear of angering superior officers. It was a calculated gamble on Lyra's part. Most low-level security would rather take a small risk than definitely piss off someone with authority. "And the civilian?" he asked, gesturing at me. "Maintenance contractor. There's a fault in the shuttle's environmental systems, needs to be addressed before departure. Again, you want to explain to the colonel why we launched with faulty life support." The guard's resistance crumbled. He waved us through with a muttered warning to stay out of the way. We were in, past the first layer of security, and the ease of it made my stomach clench with nervous energy. The plan was working, which somehow made me more anxious than if we'd encountered immediate problems. Inside the security perimeter, activity intensified. Real guards, the ones who would actually accompany the shuttle, were conducting final checks. A supervisor was reviewing flight plans with the pilot, and off to one side, surrounded by 4 heavily armed escorts, stood Dr. Marcus Venn. He looked nothing like the monster I'd expected. Just a tired man in his 50s, thin and pale from months of imprisonment, wearing the standard gray jumpsuit of high-security detainees. His hands were bound with electromagnetic restraints that would shock him unconscious if he moved wrong. His eyes held the haunted quality of someone who'd seen his life's work become his prison. "Environmental systems in Bay 3, a technician told me without looking up from his datapad. "Make it quick. We launch in 15. I nodded, moving toward the shuttle's maintenance access. This was the critical moment once inside. I'd have maybe 5 minutes before someone noticed I wasn't actually fixing anything. 5 minutes to position myself, to prepare for what came next. Lyra would stay outside, keeping watch, ready to signal if the situation changed. The shuttle's interior was cramped and utilitarian. Prisoner transport wasn't designed for comfort. I made my way to the environmental controls, opened the access panel, and began the real work planting the device Lyra had given me. A Xithe tech marvel that would scramble communications and create false sensor readings at the crucial moment. It took 3 minutes to install and initialize, my hands surprisingly steady despite the adrenaline flooding my system. Outside, I heard the shuttle's engines beginning their startup sequence. Heard the supervisor ordering everyone to final positions. Heard Dr. Venn being brought aboard, his escorts maintaining formation around him. This was it. We were committed now, past the point where backing out was an option. I exited the maintenance bay, making a show of closing panels and checking readings. The pilot gave me a cursory glance, more annoyed by my presence than suspicious. "We clear?" he asked. "All systems nominal," I replied, slipping into the technical jargon that would make me forgettable. "Environmental's running optimal. You're good to go. Then get off my shuttle. We're launching in 3. I moved toward the exit, passing within 2 meters of Dr. Venn. Our eyes met for just a moment, and I saw recognition there not of who I was, but of what I represented. Someone who didn't fit, who was out of place. His mouth opened slightly, a question or warning forming. But before he could speak, I was past him, descending the boarding ramp, trying not to run despite every instinct screaming at me to move faster. Lyra met me at the perimeter, her expression controlled, but I could read the tension in her posture. "Device is active?" she asked quietly. "Initialized and ready. Once they're 20 minutes into flight, it'll trigger. They'll think they're experiencing systems failure, drop out of acceleration to assess. That's our window. Then we wait. And we hope the Queen's calculations were accurate." We moved to an observation area where off-duty personnel watched shuttles come and go, just 2 more faces in the crowd. Dr. Venn's transport lifted smoothly, its engines transitioning from vertical thrust to horizontal acceleration. Within minutes, it was a bright point of light against Luna's black sky, following the trajectory that would take it to platform Epsilon 7. 20 minutes. We had 20 minutes of enforced normalcy, of pretending everything was fine while the device I'd planted counted down to activation. I tried to look casual, tried to match the bored expressions of the actual workers around us. But inside, my mind was racing through scenarios, calculating contingencies, preparing for the dozen ways this could all fall apart. "Tell me something," I said quietly, needing distraction from the waiting. "When this is over, assuming we survive, what happens to you? Do you go back to the collective, report success, and move on to the next mission?" Lyra was silent for a moment, her eyes tracking the shuttle's trajectory on the display screens. "I don't know," she admitted. "The Queen has other assignments, other needs. But this mission extracting Venn, stopping the Erasure Protocol, this changes things. Once it's done, once the weapon is destroyed, there might be opportunity for actual negotiation, for peace talks instead of raids and counter-raids. If that happens, someone will need to be humanity's liaison, someone who understands both sides. And you think that someone is you?" "I think it might be both of us," she said, finally looking at me. "You've seen the Xithe through the Queen's consciousness. You understand we're not the monsters your propaganda depicts. And she hesitated, something vulnerable crossing her features. "I've seen that not all humans are destroyers. Some are capable of choosing differently, of seeing past fear to possibility. That matters. That might be the foundation something better could be built on. Before I could respond, the displays erupted with activity. Alarm indicators flashed across multiple screens. The duty officer was suddenly speaking rapidly into his headset, his voice sharp with concern. Around us, personnel stopped their casual conversations, attention focusing on the unfolding situation. Transport Shuttle Delta 7 reporting systems anomaly, the officer announced. They've dropped to minimal thrust, running diagnostics. ETA to platform Epsilon 7 now delayed by approximately 40 minutes. Lyra and I exchanged glances. The device had worked. The shuttle was vulnerable, its crew distracted by phantom malfunctions, its defensive systems compromised. Now came the hard part, getting to them before anyone realized this wasn't a random technical failure. Our extraction ship was positioned exactly where it needed to be, hiding in Luna's sensor shadow, waiting for the signal. Lyra activated the encrypted communicator built into her stolen uniform, sending a burst transmission that would look like routine security traffic to anyone monitoring. 3 clicks. The go code. "We need to move," Lyra said, her voice tight with controlled urgency. "Our window is limited. Once they realize the malfunction is artificial, response teams will scramble. We have maybe 20 minutes before this entire operation becomes a shooting war." We left the observation area with the practiced nonchalance of people finishing their shift, but the moment we cleared the main corridors, we ran. Through maintenance tunnels that Lyra had memorized from the Queen's intelligence reports, up emergency ladders that hadn't seen use in years, finally emerging at an auxiliary docking port where unauthorized vessels definitely weren't supposed to be. The Xithe ship was there, shimmering into visibility as we approached a small craft, barely large enough for 4 people, but equipped with technology that made it effectively invisible to human sensors. Its hull rippled like water, organic and technological simultaneously, beautiful and deeply unsettling. "Get in," Lyra commanded, already moving toward the hatch that opened like a flower blooming. "Our pilot is synchronized with the Queen's tactical network. She'll intercept the shuttle while the crew is distracted." I scrambled aboard, the interior adapting to my presence with disturbing fluidity. The pilot, another Xithe whose name I never learned, didn't acknowledge us, her consciousness already merged with the ship's systems, navigating space with an intimacy that human pilots could never achieve. We launched hard and fast, acceleration that should have liquefied my organs dampened by Xithe gravity manipulation until it felt like a gentle push. Luna fell away beneath us, and ahead I could see the disabled shuttle, drifting at minimal thrust exactly where our sabotage had left it. "They're hailing us," the pilot said, her voice distant and mechanical. "Standard security challenge." How should I respond? "Emergency medical transport," Lyra replied immediately, her mind already 3 moves ahead. "Tell them we're responding to a medical emergency aboard the shuttle. Priority 1 medical evac. That'll buy us enough time to dock." The pilot transmitted, and I watched the shuttle's response on displays that formed seamlessly in the air before us. Confusion, verification requests, protocol checks. But underneath it all, the baseline human instinct to help someone in medical distress. We were gambling on humanity's better nature, ironically, while conducting what was essentially a hostage rescue. "They're granting docking clearance," the pilot announced. "But their security team is on high alert. They suspect something irregular." "Doesn't matter," Lyra said. checking her weapon, a Xithe biodisruptor that would incapacitate without killing. Once we're docked, speed is everything. Jake, you remember the layout? I nodded, my mouth too dry for words. We drilled this, practiced it until the movements were automatic. But theory and reality were different countries, separated by the border of consequence where mistakes meant death. The docking process took 90 seconds that felt like hours. Our ship sealed against the shuttle's auxiliary port with a sound like a kiss, connections forming at molecular levels. Then the hatch opened, and we were moving. The shuttle's security team was waiting, weapons raised, positioned exactly where we'd predicted. But they were expecting human attackers, human tactics. They weren't prepared for Lyra's speed, for the way she moved like liquid violence, her biodisruptor firing in controlled bursts that dropped 3 guards before they could process what was happening. I went low and right, using the confusion to slip past the engagement, heading for the prisoner compartment where Ven would be secured. Behind me, I heard shouts, the distinct sound of Lyra's weapon firing, the heavy thud of bodies hitting the deck. Then an alarm: someone had triggered the security alert. Our 20-minute window had just collapsed to maybe 5. The prisoner compartment was sealed, biometric locks that should have been impossible to bypass. But Lyra had given me a device for this Xithe technology that could spoof human biometrics with disturbing accuracy. I pressed it against the lock, watched it cycle through possibilities faster than thought, felt the mechanism click open. Doctor. Marcus Ven looked up as I entered, his eyes wide with fear and confusion. Who are you? What's happening? Someone who's trying to prevent you from being responsible for genocide, I said bluntly, moving to his restraints. Your Erasure Protocol, it's going to be used to wipe out the entire Xithe species, billions dead. Is that what you wanted when you designed it? His face went pale. That's not. It was meant to be a deterrent, a weapon that would never be used. Just the threat of it would. Deterrents get deployed. I interrupted, working on the electromagnetic restraints. That's the thing about weapons, Doctor. Someone always finds a reason to use them. Now you're coming with us, and you're going to help destroy what you created. The restraints fell away. Ven rubbed his wrists, still processing. You're working with them, with the Xithe. You're a traitor. Yeah, probably, I admitted. Add it to the long list of things I'll have to live with. Now move. Unless you want to die here when the response teams arrive. We emerged from the prisoner compartment to find Lyra standing over 6 unconscious guards, not a hair out of place, her weapon tracking calmly for additional threats. She looked at Ven with an expression I couldn't quite read, rage, grief, bitter satisfaction all mixed together. Dr. Ven, she said, her voice carrying the weight of 1,000 deaths. I am Lyra. My family died because of your government's attack on the Helios colony. The weapon you created will kill billions more. You will help us stop this, or I will leave you here to face justice from your own people. Choose quickly. Ven looked between us, his scientific mind clearly working through scenarios, calculating odds. If I help you, he said slowly, if I provide the locations and protocols, what guarantee do I have that the Xithe won't simply turn the weapon against humanity? That I'm not just switching which genocide gets committed? You have my word, Lyra said. The Queen does not wage war through biological weapons. We will destroy the Erasure Protocol completely, ensure it cannot be replicated. And in exchange, you will be granted asylum, protection, and perhaps the chance to use your considerable intellect for something other than death. The word of an alien, Ven said bitterly. That's supposed to be enough? It's more than your own people gave you, I pointed out. "They were moving you to a facility where you disappear permanently, Doctor. Killed or imprisoned forever because you knew too much. At least the Xithe are offering you a choice." Something broke in Ven's expression, the realization that he'd been a tool, used and discarded by the same government he'd served so faithfully. "The facilities," he said quietly. "There are 6 primary locations. I can provide coordinates, security protocols, everything you need to neutralize the project, but we need to move now. The research is nearly complete. Within weeks, they could begin deployment." "Then let's go," Lyra said, already moving toward our ship. Behind us, I could hear the growing sounds of response shuttles launching from Luna, security teams mobilizing, the full weight of humanity's military apparatus beginning to focus on our location. We ran. Through corridors slick with condensation, over the unconscious bodies of guards, into the Xithe ship that waited with patient alien intelligence. The hatch sealed behind us, and immediately I felt the acceleration, felt us breaking away from the disabled shuttle and diving toward the dark spaces between worlds where human sensors couldn't follow. Weapons fire lit up the void around us, energy beams and projectiles trying desperately to hit a target that moved according to physics humanity didn't fully understand. The pilot wove through the assault with mechanical precision, the ship responding to her thoughts faster than any manual control could achieve. Then we were clear, accelerating past the point where human vessels could maintain pursuit, leaving Luna and its security forces behind in an expanding sphere of frustrated rage. Dr. Ven sat in stunned silence, processing the fact that his entire world had just inverted. Lyra watched him with wary eyes, ready to act if he tried anything foolish. And I felt something I hadn't expected: relief. Not celebration, because this was just the beginning, but relief that we'd succeeded, that the impossible had bent just enough to let us through, that maybe the Queen's probability calculations had been accurate after all. "Where are we going?" Ven asked finally. "To meet the Queen," Lyra replied. "She has questions only you can answer. And then, Doctor, you're going to help us save 2 species from mutual annihilation." Section 8. The journey to the heart of Xithe space took longer than I expected, though time felt strange in the ship's environment. We traveled through regions that human science would call impossible spaces, where reality bent in ways that made my head hurt if I thought about them too carefully. Dr. Ven spent most of the journey in withdrawn silence, occasionally asking technical questions about Xithe technology that Lyra answered with surprising patience. I watched the stars shift through perspectives I didn't understand and tried not to think about the fact that I could never go home again. On the 3rd day, we arrived. The Xithe homeworld materialized around us like a dream, resolving into reality, not a single planet but a network of habitats connected by technology that blurred the line between structure and organism. Stations that breathed, ships that grew, architecture that responded to need rather than following fixed design. It was beautiful and alien and deeply humbling, a reminder that humanity's understanding of what civilization could be was painfully limited. The Queen received us in a space that existed partially outside normal dimensions. I felt her presence before I saw her vast consciousness that touched the edges of my mind with surprising gentleness. When she finally manifested, she appeared not as a physical form but as a nexus of light and thought, a being that had transcended the limitations of biology while somehow remaining intimately connected to her people. Dr. Marcus Ven. Her voice resonated in our minds, carrying layers of meaning that words alone couldn't convey. "You have created something terrible, But you are here, which suggests you understand that creation carries responsibility. Will you help us unmake what you have made?" Ven stood before the queen, looking small and fragile and utterly overwhelmed. "I thought I was protecting humanity," he said, his voice breaking. "I thought the Xithe were the threat, that we needed a weapon that could end the conflict decisively. I didn't understand that I was building the tools for genocide." "Understanding often comes too late," the queen replied, and I heard sadness in her words. "But it can still have value if acted upon. The Erasure Protocol exists in 6 facilities across human space. We need their exact locations, their security systems, the protocols for neutralizing the weapons before they can be deployed. Will you provide this information? And if I do," Ven asked, "what happens to me? What happens to humanity? You will be granted asylum here, protection from those who would silence you." As for humanity, the queen's presence shifted, and suddenly I felt her attention focus on me. "That depends on whether there are more humans like Jake Reeves. Those capable of choosing conscience over convenience, who see persons rather than threats." I felt the weight of that attention, the way the queen seemed to look through me into possibilities I couldn't perceive. "I'm not special," I said. "I'm just someone who got tired of being complicit in atrocities. There are others like me, there have to be. People who are questioning, doubting, looking for alternatives to endless conflict." "Yes," the queen agreed. "The probability streams show them, scattered across your civilization. Not many, but enough. Enough that perhaps there is a path forward that doesn't end in extinction for either of our peoples. But that path requires action. Dr. Ven must provide the information. You must help us destroy the weapons. And then, Jake Reeves, you must return to your people as an emissary, as proof that the Xithe seek peace rather than conquest." The implications hit me like a physical blow. "You want me to go back? After everything I've done, every protocol I've violated? They'll arrest me the moment I set foot in human space. I'll be executed as a traitor." "Not if you return with evidence," the queen said. "Not if you can prove that the Prometheus Initiative has been developing weapons of genocide, that your own government has been planning atrocities in secret. Humans value transparency, accountability, justice, at least in theory. Give them the truth, and let them choose what to do with it." Lyra had been silent throughout the exchange, but now she spoke. "That's suicide. They'll bury the evidence, silence him, continue the program in secret. You're asking him to sacrifice himself for nothing." "I'm asking him to have faith," the queen corrected gently. "Faith that humanity is capable of choosing differently when given complete information. Faith that not all humans are like those who created the Erasure Protocol. It is a risk, yes. But all paths forward carry risk. This one at least offers hope." I looked at Lyra, saw the fear and anger in her expression, the desperate desire to protect me from what felt like certain death. We'd grown close during the journey, found comfort in each other's presence, started to imagine futures that involved something more than survival. And now the queen was asking me to throw that away, to walk back into the fire on the slim chance that humanity might actually listen. "There has to be another way," Lyra insisted. "Let me go instead. I can infiltrate, can deliver the evidence without—" "It must be a human," the queen interrupted. "A human who chose to help us, who saw beyond propaganda and fear to truth. Only that testimony will carry weight with those who matter. Only that sacrifice will demonstrate that peace is possible. Doctor." Ven stepped forward, his scientific mind clearly working through the logic. "She's right," he said quietly. "If a Xithe presents evidence, it will be dismissed as fabrication or manipulation. But a human soldier, someone with no prior connection to the Xithe, someone who threw away everything to stop a genocide, that's a story that might actually penetrate the propaganda, that might actually change minds." I wanted to argue, to find the flaw in their reasoning, but I couldn't because they were right. This was the logical endpoint of the choice I'd made back on Station Osiris, the inevitable consequence of deciding that principles mattered more than safety. I'd known, on some level, that there was no walking away from this cleanly, that real change required real sacrifice. "Okay," I said, surprised by how calm I sounded. "I'll do it. But I need time first, time to help destroy the weapons facilities, time to gather evidence that's irrefutable, and I looked at Lyra, I need to say goodbye properly. If I'm walking into almost certain death, I at least want that." The Queen's presence shifted again, and I felt approval mixed with something that might have been compassion. "You shall have what you need. Dr. Venn will provide the facility locations. We will plan surgical strikes to neutralize the weapons before they can be deployed. And when it is done, when the evidence is gathered and the immediate threat is eliminated, you will return to humanity. You will tell them what you have seen, what you have learned, and you will trust that some will listen." The next weeks were a blur of activity. Venn provided detailed schematics of all 6 facilities, breaking down their security systems and weapon storage protocols with the precision of someone who designed them. Xithe strike teams, including Lyra, who refused to be left behind, conducted raids that were surgical and devastating. The facilities were neutralized one by one, their research destroyed, their personnel captured with evidence of what they'd been creating. I documented everything, recorded testimony from Venn, gathered physical evidence from the facilities, compiled data that showed irrefutably what the Prometheus Initiative had been planning, built a case that would be difficult to deny or suppress, though I had no illusions about how hard they would try. And through it all, I spent every possible moment with Lyra. We talked about everything and nothing, shared memories and hopes, and the 1,000 small intimacies that build connections between souls. She taught me words in her language that had no human equivalent, concepts about consciousness and connection that expanded how I understood reality. I taught her about human music, about the way we used rhythm and melody to express emotions too complex for words. On our last night before I returned to human space, we stood together on an observation platform, watching stars that neither of our species had names for. "I don't want you to go," Lyra said quietly, her hand finding mine. "I know it's necessary. I understand the logic, but I don't want to lose you after just finding you." "You won't lose me," I said, trying to believe it myself. "Even if the worst happens, even if they execute me as a traitor, what we've done matters. We stopped a genocide. We gave peace a chance. That's something worth dying for." "Is it?" she asked, and her voice was raw with emotion. "Or is it just another way of saying that individuals don't matter, that we're all just pieces to be sacrificed for abstract concepts like justice or peace?" I thought about that, about the tension between individual worth and collective good that every civilization struggled with. "Maybe both," I admitted. "Maybe individuals matter precisely because we can choose to sacrifice for something larger. Maybe that's what gives life meaning, the ability to decide that some principles are worth the cost." Lyra pulled me closer, and I felt the warmth of her presence. So different from human, but so fundamentally familiar. "The Queen says, Probability streams are converging, she said. She says there's a future where you survive this, where you successfully change enough minds that peace becomes possible. She says in that future, you and I, she hesitated, vulnerability clear in her voice, we find each other again, build something together, prove that two species can coexist not just politically but personally. I'd like that future, I said softly. Let's try to make it real. The next morning, I boarded a small Xithe vessel loaded with evidence and testimony, ready to return to human space. Lyra came with me as far as the border, then transferred me to a human shuttle that had been appropriated during one of the raids. We said our goodbyes in the moment before I crossed back into the world I'd left behind, and words felt inadequate for everything I wanted to express. Come back to me, Lyra said finally, her hand pressed against the transparent barrier between our ships. Choose the future where we meet again. I'll do my best, I promised. Then the ship separated, and I was alone, piloting toward Luna with evidence of humanity's planned genocide and no certainty about what would happen when I arrived. The reception was exactly as chaotic as I'd expected. Military vessels surrounded me immediately, weapons locked, demands for surrender broadcast on every frequency. I complied without resistance, transmitted the evidence packages to multiple news networks and oversight committees simultaneously, and waited to see if truth would actually matter. The trial took 6 months. 6 months of testimony and evidence and fierce debates about national security versus moral accountability. The Prometheus Initiative fought viciously to suppress the information, to paint me as a traitor and the evidence as fabrication. But Dr. Ven's testimony was devastating, the physical evidence irrefutable, and slowly, painfully, public opinion shifted. In the end, I was acquitted not because they believed I'd done the right thing, but because prosecuting me would have required admitting the full scope of what had been planned. The Prometheus Initiative was officially disbanded, its leadership facing their own trials, and tentatively, carefully, humanity reached out to the Xithe with proposals for actual peace negotiations rather than continued conflict. I was there when the first official meeting happened, human diplomats and Xithe representatives gathering in neutral space to begin the long work of building trust. And standing among the Xithe delegation, her eyes finding mine across the room, was Lyra. We'd chosen the future where we found each other again, where two species learned that coexistence was possible, where an alien queen had sent her warrior to kill me, but something changed when I looked into her eyes, something that revealed we were never as different as fear wanted us to believe. It wasn't a perfect ending. Peace was fragile, threatened constantly by those who preferred the clarity of conflict to the ambiguity of cooperation. But it was a beginning, and sometimes beginnings are enough. I crossed the room to Lyra, took her hand in mine, and felt the connection that transcended species or politics or any of the artificial boundaries we use to define ourselves. We did it, I said quietly. We did, she agreed. Now comes the harder part, building something that lasts. Together? I asked. Together, she confirmed. And in that moment, despite everything we'd endured and sacrificed, despite the uncertain future ahead, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: hope.